I've been an English teacher or something like that. I've been a teacher for the last 17 years, I think it is. I'm getting old. And I was teaching in Minneapolis, and it was a really, really good charter school I was teaching at, but I was looking to teach public school. I'm a big believer in public education in general, and so I was looking to teach there. So this year I'll be teaching 9th grade English, but I've always been teaching some kind of reading and writing. And the main reason that I'm a teacher is because that was the one subject in school that for me, and not every kid is like this, but for me it was like we'd be given homework to read, and I couldn't believe it. It was just like playing. Like it was the only kind of homework I got that I wanted to do, that I would have done voluntarily even if no one was making me. So when I realized that I could actually spend my life teaching reading, it was like that was a possibility. The idea that I could then become the person who wrote the kind of books that I read just seemed incredible. Every morning I would get up and I would write for 2 or 3 hours. And what I realized was that in that one way, I was incredibly dedicated and hardworking. Like everybody I think has, even people who say they're lazy probably have something they do all the time, even if people aren't making them do it. And for me, I was able and willing to sit down and write for a couple hours, like kind of on command whenever I could find the time. And that was daily, day after day. I didn't even know it existed when I was first in college, but I found out that you can actually go to grad school for creative writing. Go to grad school and just spend 3 years writing a book, basically. I got really, really lucky, and I mean like win the lottery lucky, and I got into the University of Minnesota, which actually pays for you to be there. So I got to spend 3 years being paid to write a book. And that also included 3 years where, because I was in that program, I also was required to teach. And so I found out then and there that I wanted to keep being a writer, and also just how much I love teaching. This is Stew Stories, and this was my first teaching gig. I was teaching in middle school. And I realized that a whole lot of students were either coming into class or walking out of class thinking that English class was okay, but it was kind of just where you get your spelling corrected and stuff. And I really wanted them to walk in there or walk out of there with this notion that actually English class is primarily story time for older kids and even adults. English class is where we do stories. And so I started telling stories based on an actual friend of mine growing up. And then at one point, a student said, "You've got to write these down, you'll make $1 million, And so I took them up on the challenge and I wrote them all down. I haven't quite made $1 million, but I'm really proud of them. Another book that I published is Kirsten Howard's Biggest Fan. This one is set in a town loosely based on my actual hometown, and it's based on kids who were something like the kids I grew up with as well, and it's a basketball book, and a ton of readers who don't like to read sometimes like sports books, so it's a sports book for that reason, but there's also a huge controversial scandal in the middle of it that I won't tell you about. Stew Stories is for middle school and maybe up to about 9th grade. Kirsten Howard's is definitely for high school age. It's called Young Adult. And then my latest book, my first ever picture book, came out of playing with my daughter Esme, and I literally just got my hands on this today before this interview, but it'll be out in bookstores in a couple weeks, and it's called Behold, It's Unipig. This is a book that actually came out of the pandemic, and I was hanging out with my daughter, and so we ended up just playing this game with one of her squishmallows, which was it was a pig, and we named it Unipig, and it was always hiding from us, and it was really, really bad at hiding, but it thought it was really good at hiding. And we would just laugh and laugh, and so I wrote a book about it. There's a launch party for it at the Red Balloon Bookstore in St. Paul on Saturday, the 19th of August, so Saturday, August 19th at 10:30 in the morning. So, if you want to come, love to see you there. The most rewarding part about being an author is believing that maybe a book I wrote could, affect a reader, often a kid reader, usually a kid reader, in the same way that I remember being affected when I was a kid. This idea that somehow I am a part of that same chain of readers and authors, in which, one of my books to be that kid's the book for the kid for a while. As a teacher, the most rewarding thing is getting to see students sort of in their full humanity. It seems to me that we don't spend quite enough time as teachers trying to create the environment where kids actually truly love books, where they don't actually have to be talked into anything at all. Imagine if I ask a whole room of students, read these 30 pages, and every single kid comes back having read 50 pages instead. And the reason I know that that's possible is because I experienced it. As a matter of fact, when I was a kid, that was the time of my life when I read most intensely. And I feel like we tend to talk about reading in books and stories as though we're doing this only because we're trying to well, they need to learn this skill and this skill and this skill, which are very important. But I know for a fact that we actually, that the kids can intensely read. In fact, I think kids can more intensely read, be more engaged in their reading than adults typically can. I'm nervous in the way of I'm looking forward to getting started. I'm excited to see kids every single day and learn their names and, like I said, go to their events and just start treating this place like it's like my hometown.